Hello, everyone. Welcome to this monthly silhouette tutorial. We are going to go ahead and get started first with a little bit of housekeeping to take care of things. If you have any questions through the entire tutorial, I'm going to try and keep it an hour or less. Let's cross our fingers and see what we can do, but it really depends on up to you. I will be here to answer your questions. So if you have questions on the design process or print and cut, we can answer those. If you have additional questions after that, we can also get into that, and I am happy to answer any questions that you do have. So you are really the driving factor of this. I do have a game plan, and tonight's is actually going to be creating your own design in the Silhouette Studio software and then setting it up for a print and cut. So we have a few people who've joined us from even Australia. Good morning over there. A couple people who've used print and cut and a few that have not. So that's great. So just to clarify for a second, I have a dual monitor system. So I have the YouTube channel information in your chat over to my right side, and that is why you will see me look in that direction. I also have some very brief notes on to keep this hopefully going in the right direction. And then, so you'll see me look over there, and that is why. So I will be looking for your questions, and we are going to go ahead and get started. I do want to say, first off, my name is Ellie Mae with Silhouette Secrets. If you have not heard of me or followed me before, many of you already have. I do have a website out there, and sorry, the cats have decided it's their time to run around and play, if you can hear that in the background. So they are joining us in this live as well. I have been teaching Silhouette users since 2016, and I have taught online, I've taught in-person events, I've taught one-on-one, hands-on in-person classes, and I've also taught globally as well. So we have quite a range in the Silhouette Secrets Facebook group it is a global group. So we answer a lot of questions in there, and we help users whenever we can. So I also have step-by-step classes that are available on Teachable. Links for additional information are below this video. So whether you are joining in live or you are watching this on replay, there are additional links below the video. And then as questions are asked, I will also make notes of those and go back and add additional resources to the description as well, so that you have some additional resources to fall back on after the video is done. So just make sure that if we have any questions, we're going to get those answered. So the next little housekeeping is make sure to engage YouTube. Their algorithm, I hate algorithms. I really hate actual social media anyhow, because you have to play the game. But engagement is where they want you. So make sure to give that thumbs up, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications of future content. My goal at the moment, if this continues to be a popular thing, is that I will do at least one silhouette tutorial live once a month. Right now, it's typically falls on the third Monday night of the month. If you have any additional questions, make sure to just post those in the comments. We will go through and get those answered. If by the end of the session I have not answered your question, feel free to ask it again, and we will take a look at that. There's also a coupon in the description below for a discount off of the Silhouette classes. And you can always buy a coffee, which means you are just helping out to support the Silhouette Secrets channel. Website tutorials, classes that I do. Everything is a very big help, and I thank you for your support. So with that, let's see. Connie Loring says that she has not done much print and cut. She started in 2013. Okay. Alexa has just notified me there's some sort of notification. Oh, sorry. I talked. Alexa off. There's rain coming to our area. It was 80 degrees here. I was in long pants this morning and then shorts this afternoon. So we have right now quite a selection. We're in that phase of our weather where it's heater in the morning, air conditioning in the afternoon. But let's go ahead and let's get started. I don't see any questions in there at all. So I'm going to show you how to create what I tried to find an actual name for it, but it's a pop out top card. So the design is actually cut out of the back, and you can use these for cards. You could send them to someone in the mail. I'm going to show you how to create this so you can fit it into an envelope, but you can also use them as place card holders. We're coming up on the Thanksgiving holiday in the US, so you could use it for place card holders, or you could use it for put a bag underneath it, and you can attach the bag as a treat topper for kids' parties, adult parties too, I guess, whatever you'd like to do. So I'm going to show you how you can create it to make it fit in an envelope that you could send. Now, I will be using the card dimensions for a US sized card. I'm kind of jealous sometimes of international, like UK, Australia, I think does it too, where their postage, they can have square cards and it doesn't cost, I mean, that's your normal size or your normal shape. If we do a square card here in the US, we have to pay extra postage on that. So sometimes I wish I could just create these square cards, and the uniformity of them makes it so much easier. So, but I'm going to be using a design for a US based size card that's 4.25 inches by 5.5 inches, but you can use the same steps and create any size that you would like. So, oh, square cards cost extra in Australia too. I did not know that. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I don't know if Therese is on here tonight. It's really late in the, London, but she'll join us in tomorrow. But I drool over her cards. She creates the square cards, and sometimes I see them in the design store, and I really, really want the design, and it doesn't really fit into a rectangle shape. So maybe I'm just too lazy to go to the post office and get extra postage. Someday I'll just have to do it. I'm going to start with creating my card base. So I do have a Cameo 5. That's the machine I'm going to be demonstrating with tonight. I have it set up for a 12 by 12 cutting mat, and we'll get into cutting mats here in some of the print and cut tips that I have to share with you. And then I'm going to be printing on a letter size sheet of paper. So I'm just going to set that up. You really can design with whatever size, media size on your page when you're in the design process. It's when you get into setting up for the print and cut that it becomes especially important that you have your setup correct. I'm going to just come over here to the drawing tools on the left-hand side, and I'm going to select a rounded rectangle. And then I'm going to left click, drag across on my cutting mat, on the design mat, and I'm going to just draw a rounded rectangle. It does not need to be a particular size because I can change that. Often I find it's really difficult to draw the exact size of a circle or a rectangle that you really want. Say you want 3 by 5. It's really difficult to get that exactly perfect. So we can easily use these, the height and width scale tools in the quick access toolbar at the top. I'm going to unlock that. And then I'm actually going to change this, and it's going to start out square, but I'm going to change it to 5.5 by 5.5. And I'll tell you why here in just a second. So since I'm making this to fit into an envelope, for us, my card size, a standard card size, is 4.25 inches by 5.5 inches. So I'm going to start with this shape, and you'll see this come out in the design here in just a second, and it'll make more sense. You can also find those scale tools on the right-hand side. Oops, sorry. Thank you so much. Gosh, I'm just in here designing and you guys can't see anything. Hang on one second. This live stuff is, this is why I have such a hard time going live. It's because I am not good at this. Okay, well, we'll start over. So you got to hear all of the, hear my voice, I guess is what we can say. Thank you so much for letting me know. There we go. Okay, now you can see my screen. I can see my screen on the YouTube. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, I'm going to delete this. So over here on the page setup panel, I have the Cameo 5 selected. I have a Cameo 12 by 12 cutting mat, and I have letter size sheet of paper. I'm going to come over to the left-hand side, and I'm going to select the rounded rectangle. You could use the regular rectangle if you wanted to, but I'm going to use the rounded rectangle. And then I'm going to left click and just drag and drop that shape onto my design mat. I do not need to set the specific size because I can change that. So in the top quick access toolbar, when you have an object selected, you will get options that are the most used tools in the quick access toolbar along the top. So if you have a shape selected, it's going to give you the tools for a shape. If you have text selected, it's going to give you the text tools. It is a fluid toolbar, so it will move or it changes depending on what you have selected. And depending on your screen size is what you might see on the screen. So if you have a smaller screen size, you may have more of these icons with this little gray, little gray window or corner on it. When you move your mouse over top of that, that will expand. So if you have a small screen, then you may have more of those along this quick access toolbar. You can also find these tools on the right-hand side in the panels. And it really just depends on what you're most comfortable with, on which one works the best. There are a few tools that do not show up, like rotate is not on the quick access toolbar, even though we've requested it. We'll continue to request it because it is something that users use a lot. But sometimes there's just not all the options. For instance, the fill color panel on the right-hand side, I'll just click on it to show you. You can't fit all of that into a quick access toolbar. So sometimes it's just the most common used tools in that panel. So I'm going to click back here on this transform panel. And then the second tab here is your scale tab. And you'll see that you have your width and your height there also. So you can change it in either location. And you can either click apply in the panel or you can click enter. So here I'm going to come up to the quick access toolbar at the top. I'm going to enter 5.5 and 5.5 and hit enter. And then you see my rectangle change size. Now, since I drew a rounded rectangle, I have a couple of options here. Whenever you see red dots, that means those are some control points that you have control over changing. So you can click on one and you can change the angle at which this is. I'm going to Control Z to undo. Same thing with this next one. You can control them independently of each other. Or if you hold down your shift key and click on one, you can adjust and it will adjust proportionally and adjust on both sides. It also adjusts not just this corner, but it's adjusting all four corners so it is equal. So you can decide what you want to do there. And then we can right click on this. When we're done, we can choose convert to path. This is going to take it out of that editable mode with those corners and those control points, and it makes it a vector design. So we still have some abilities to change this rounded rectangle, but we no longer can change the actual angle of the corner. The same goes when you're working with flexi shapes and they have those control points. So once you have your design, your shape, how you would like it, then you can right click and choose convert to path. So now we have this shape to start with, and depending on what your project is, will be the actual size that you are creating with it. So first I'm going to come over, and I know I'm going to be making a card or something that folds. So I'm going to use the line tool on the left-hand side, and I'm simply going to grab the line, and I'm going to hold my shift key down. And if I hold my shift key down, it's going to draw a straight line. If I move the cursor, it will jump to certain angles, 45 degree, 90 degree, and so forth. If I don't hold my shift key down, then it will draw wherever you move that mouse, that's how it's going to draw. So I can simply just draw a straight line and click again, and it's going to give me a straight line right. For me, it drew it pretty much in the middle, wherever you are drawing that on your screen. Then I'm going to come over to the right-hand side, and I just use, because I've been working with Silhouette for so long, I just use a perforated line for my score lines. It doesn't bother me. Sometimes it looks a little odd when you have white core cardstock, but it's just what I've gotten used to. So however you create your score line, if you want to keep it a solid line and set that up as a score line with less settings, that is completely up to you. We're going to use a perforated line for this demonstration. So the one thing I do want to mention is I do not have my score line go end to end, because I don't want the dash to hit on the very edge of the card. Then you're more likely to tear the card when you are folding it, or when the person is opening and closing it, that kind of thing. So quick drink here. Once I have that line, I'm going to select both of these, the rounded rectangle and the score line. And I'm simply, in this case, going to hit the center icon. So you can find some of your align tools at the top quick access toolbar as well. I'm going to click center, and that's going to center it both horizontally and vertically. You can also find those tools over on the right-hand side under the transform panel. And your first tab is your align tools. So you have the same icons that appear in the panel as you do up in your quick access toolbar. And once I have that, so I now have drawn my card base. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in the design. With the Silhouette Secrets newsletter for this year, I started offering a free design. I am working with designers and collaborating with them. And this month's file is from Lori Whitlock. So I'm going to come over here to my library. Thankfully, cross my fingers, if I say it too loud, maybe it will end up with an error. But so far, I forgot to turn it to working offline before I started the video. This file is called Fall Blessings, and there is a link in the description below. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, it comes out every Friday, and this is the file for this month. So I'm going to click on that just to show you bigger. So this is designed, it is a cut file. All of these are individual pieces with one solid layer for the background, for the wreath. So you can cut it out of individual pieces, but my goal every month with the newsletter is I share a new project each week created with the free file. So with this one, the first one, and I'll show those at the very end, you can kind of see them behind me here. But I created the wreath at the full size. It was designed as a large cut file. So some of those pieces, if you try to shrink them down too much, are going to be difficult to cut. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how you can turn this into a print and cut. So if I close this, I'm going to double click on it to bring it onto my design mat. And then I think it's all is one piece. I think there's two groupings. Okay. Oh, so I didn't grab the fall. So with that, I'm going to Control Z. If I left click and drag across the outer edges of this wreath, I can grab those and then hold my shift key down and select the fall and the blessings. And then I should have everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, with everything selected, I'm going to right click and choose group or Control G. So this is quite large for my design. I'm going to just scale this down a little bit. And this is the process that I just go through each time I'm working with a design. A lot of times I will just play with something and push buttons and use Control Z. Undo is your best friend. You can use Control Z or the undo function up here in the top toolbar. Now, just because of one for visual, I'm actually going to take the line color off of this. So if I zoom in here, there's red cut lines all around this. And those are cut lines. If the line has weight to it, we'll just open this up here in the line style panel. If you have a thickness to your line, it will print. To group is Control G, or on a Mac is Command G. There's multiple ways you can do things, or right click and choose group. It really just depends on what you are working with. If you go to right click and it keeps deselecting whatever you're trying to group, that's when I use the keyboard shortcut, because it works better than having to fight with it getting deselected all the time. So with this, you can see with the design selected, my point line thickness is 0. That means even though I can see the red line, it should not print. If there was a line thickness of anything, even 0.01, it will print. And sometimes there are some designs from the Silhouette Design Store that come in with a line thickness of 0.1, but you don't know until you go to the print preview that it's actually going to print. Or with me, usually it's after I've printed it that I've realized that that line has a weight to it. So I'm going to just come up here to my quick access toolbar. This is how I've gotten used to the quick access toolbar. I can simply come over here to the color tab in the line style panel too, and then just choose the cross-hatched pattern. That's going to take my line color out. So I'll do this a lot when I'm working and creating designs, because it's not as distracting. And the red is just indicating that it is created as a cut line. Red in Silhouette is designated, defaulted as the cut line. Now, once I have this, I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit and try to keep this as big as possible on the screen. So I'm going to take this wreath and I'm going to move it over top of my design. So you can center it if you wanted to. Let's just see here. I'm going to left click, drag across everything, and just use my center icon, and we'll see how that works. No, that doesn't work too bad. So we can go with that. What I might do is I'm going to actually decrease this in size again, and then I'll left click and select everything and center that again. So now I kind of have my card design. So then I need to create this cut line that's going to go around the outer edge. So once I have the size that I want for this wreath, I'm going to create the outer edge for that. So let's zoom in here so we can see this a little bit easier. And what I'm going to do is I grouped the wreath together, but in this case, I am going to be adding an offset to it. So I do not need the offset to be around the fall blessings. So I'm going to right click on this wreath and choose ungroup. Now you see these selection boxes are now around this. That means that those pieces are ungrouped from the wreath part of the design. And then I'm going to click off of it to deselect it. And I want to click on this brown part of this wreath. So I'm going to move this so you can see it. So this is one solid piece. That is the piece I want selected that I want it to make the offset around. So I'm going to hit Control Z so it goes back to the exact spot. So with the background wreath selected, I'm going to come over here to my offset panel. And I'm going to go a little bit slow here because I think it'll be easier to follow. I'm going to click on offset with that wreath selected, and then you can adjust the distance. In my software version, it is going to default back to the last offset number that I used. In past software versions, there was an automatic default here. So it depends on what software version you are in on what that number is going to be. So you can adjust the distance either by using the arrows here, by typing in this box, or by using the slider bar. I find I just like to use the little arrows, but don't click too fast or it will continue to keep going down. Think of it like this. When you are creating an offset, you are creating a new cut line of your design. If that design is very detailed, which in this case, that wreath has a lot of detail to it, it has to recalculate that data every time you make a change. So as I'm decreasing this offset, it's recalculating, it's thinking about what it needs to do for that design. What I'm looking for, and it's complete personal preference, there is no magic number here. I just want an offset to go around outside of my wreath, because at this size, if the machine tries to cut around all of those details of this wreath, it's just going to eat my cardstock up. Even if I have really high quality cardstock, some of these details here, these little pieces, are very small. So they could get eaten in the cutting process. So I just want this outer edge of this wreath. I'm going to click apply. And then once you apply the offset is the object selected. So I want to right click. I do not need the inside of this offset. I want to right click on this and choose release compound path. And then it's a little bit hard to see, but once you release that compound path, that outer edge cut line and the inner edge cut line are now two separate pieces. So I'm going to click off of it to deselect it, and I'm going to move this so you can see that it is two separate pieces. So now I have the outer offset line only. I don't need this anymore, so I can simply just click on it and press delete. So I just have that outer offset, and that is exactly what I want, because I just want it to cut around the outer edge here. This is all going to be filled in with the cardstock, so it's going to be white, but I don't need a cut line inside of there. And then we're going to do the magic of creating the pop out. So there's a couple ways you can do this. I'm going to just show the most simple way. It may not be the most precise way, but I'm going to show the simplest way, the way I first did this. So if you double click on this outer offset, you're going to get gray dots, and you may have accidentally activated these edit points at some point when you are creating and working with a design. Edit points are a really super cool feature, and it's what makes up how the machine can cut. So all of these little gray dots are the data points that the machine has to literally connect the dots to cut the file. So you see all of these little details around the shapes. Each edit point has its own characteristics. So if I click on an edit point, you can see over on the right side, my edit point panel has popped up, and you have some different options here. We're not going to get into point editing today, except in very simple terms. So what I need to do is I need to break my edit points, because I only want the top section to cut. I don't need the bottom section to cut. Otherwise, it would just fall out of my card. So I'm going to come in here next to where my score line is, and I'm going to click on the line that's going to drop a point. And then I'm going to choose break path. It's going to give me a red dot. That means that the path is broken. This is no longer a closed shape. So I'm going to grab this red dot, and I grabbed the wrong side of it. Hold on here. Let's zoom in here a little bit so we can see. So here is my little edit point. And if needed, you can drop another edit point. If you click on it and it turns from red to white, that means that it actually snapped back together. It's no longer a broken path. So I'm just going to do that over again. I'm going to break the path and then see which one it's, oh, did it again. Okay, we'll do it this way. I'm going to drop a second edit point here. So this one, that's where I'm going to break the path. And then I'm going to grab the red dot, and I'm going to move this up here for just a second. Grab this red dot, and I'm going to move it down here. I don't need it to connect it. It does not need to be connected any longer. This little red dot here, I can simply press delete. Now, this is it's a red dot. That means that the cut line will stop there. So my cut line is going to stop at the same point intersecting with this score line. Now I need to do that same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to come over here, and let's zoom in here so it's easier to see. I'm going to drop a point on here, and then I'm going to drop another one just below it on that line. That seemed to be the easiest thing to do. And then choose break path. I get the red dot. I'm going to click the red dot and drag away. I don't need that little edit point. But if I drag it away for just a moment, it's not going to snap back together. And then this little red dot here, I can just move away for right now. Click back on this red dot and hit delete. And then I have my cut line right there. So I'm going to zoom out here so we can see on this card. One more. Okay. So if I click off of this, it's going to deactivate the edit points. And what you can see here is that it's no longer a closed shape. I have two cut lines on the top and on the bottom that are just hanging out in space. If I click on that cut line again, since it is no longer connected, if I right click and I choose release compound path, now you can see that since those lines are broken and they're no longer together, they are now two separate objects when I release that compound path. So you can see these gray selection boxes around that. I'm going to click off to deselect it and click back on this bottom line only. It's separate. I can just press delete. And now I have my pop out cut around the offset at the top. So hopefully that made sense as we went through it. I have a few more tricks here to get this file set up, but if you do have questions, please let me know. Or what I would highly recommend is watching the video again and then follow along with the video so you can actually do it at the same time. So now I have this offset cut line, but I also have still currently my score line is going through my entire card. I don't want that. I can easily just click on this and I can scale this down. And what is going, since it's a line, okay, so Crafty asked if you could use the knife tool. If you use the knife tool, when you're designing on top of the card, it would cut the entire card and the entire graphic apart. It doesn't designate between one object selected. So yes, you could use the knife if you move the offset off of the design. So I find this, if you're working with precision designs, it's a little bit easier. But otherwise, you could possibly cut through a portion of your card or your design. You can play around with that and see if the knife will work for you. I will say that the knife tool is often very data heavy, and so it doesn't work well for a lot of users because, again, when you do the knife, it has to recalculate all of that data for the entire file that it's working with. So that was a great question. I do use the knife sometimes for different designs. But if I can break it, yeah, the commercials are something YouTube automatically does in the live video. I can look at the settings for the next one, but currently it's set because the channel is monetized. So I get a few pennies for people watching the YouTube channel. So I'll see if I can change that for the next time that it doesn't interrupt during the live. So for the score line, you could easily try to break the score line apart, but the easiest thing I found was actually, since it's just a line, you can see here that it's 5.2 inches long, or width. That's the length of it, but it says it's 0.01 height, but it really doesn't have a height. So I'm just going to take this corner bounding box and I'm going to move this over here and adjust it to whatever I feel is going to be adequate enough for my score. And really all you need is just a little bit to be able to help fold that over easily. And then what I can do is I can just make a copy. So Control C or Control V, or I can hold my Alt key down and drag a copy away and move it over to the right-hand side. And then what I can do is hold my Shift key down, select the other one, and I'm going to use the Align tool and align those together. And then right-click, choose Group. And then I can next select my, let's zoom out here. I can left click and drag across the score line and the rounded rectangle, and I'm just going to center those. And so that brings my score line back up in line with the offset, and it should be in the exact center of my design. Now, the reason I designed this at 5.5 is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw another line. I'm going to just left click, hold my shift key down and draw a straight line. And then I'm going to adjust this straight line to 4.25. So when you are working with a card that you want to mail, I have the design at 5.5, which is our standard card. And then the height is 4.25. So I'm actually just a little bit over on this. So you, if I had to go back and do this over again, what I should have shown you is this, using this little 4.25 line to measure and make sure that my wreath would fit in that card. So you do want to keep that in mind when you're designing. That is one thing I would probably just keep in mind, but great for practicing. Great for practice because you can, I haven't wasted any materials here. So just keep that in mind when you're designing for your card. The other thing is if I got to this point and it was just a little bit, you can see here, it is just a little bit too high. I would just shrink my card, select the entire thing, and I would just shrink it just a little bit so it'll still fit in the envelope and I don't have to redesign the whole thing. So some of those tricks, it's just like if you fold a card in half and it's not perfectly lined up, I just take a pair of scissors and trim that off. So there's a few tricks that you pick up rather than having to, you don't waste materials when you're doing this. So far, I haven't even printed this, so it's no big deal. So are there any additional questions? Donna, it would depend on what, 4.3 is getting pretty old. I'm currently on, let's see, about Silhouette. I'm on 4.5.812, which is the current version. I had to update because my library would not sync with the Silhouette website migrations. So far, I mean, every version has bugs in it. The version you have has bugs in it. But 8.12 hasn't been too bad. Oh, yes, that's another way you could do it. You could ungroup the score line. You'd still probably have to adjust on either side, and you could delete out those cuts. The only thing would be is that it might get a little bit difficult to delete inside to select those score lines in the middle, just because your wreath is over top of that. So yeah, there's multiple ways you can do things in the software. So that's another great idea. Now here comes the part, we're going to set this up for a print and cut. So I'm going to come over here and close the point edit panel. We're going to fit to window and I'm going to save my file. That is one important thing that I often forget to do when I'm recording or recording for a class. So I'm just going to, now you're going to see my terrible file organization. Give it just a second, my computer's thinking. Even though I've had it open all day long, when it has to access my external hard drive on live video, it's going to go to not responding. Okay, any other questions? Well, hopefully I didn't lock it up. But it goes to show you, we all experience issues. Usually they do happen on camera. Most times they do. And when you're live, it's always interesting. So what is happening is it's actually, I save my designs to an external hard drive. That's what you can see over here. Toshiba E drive is my external hard drive. Sometimes it decides that it's taking longer than normal, especially when I first do it in the morning. It takes longer than normal to access that hard drive just because it's not on my computer, which I try to keep my computer clean. And then times like now, when you really need it to work, it decides it's just not going to. I can see that the hard drive's active over here. There we go. Okay. Now you'll see all my crazy. Oh, not November. Wrong year even. 2014, October. You can see all this stuff. So I'm just going to put this pop out top card. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. My tech problems. So now what I want to do is I'm going to come over to the page setup panel in the top right corner, and I want to set this up for a print and cut. Now, I rarely have problems with print and cut, and that is because I do the same exact steps every single time. I'm going to come to the registration marks tab at the top, and then I'm going to click on. So in this changed probably about 4.3. Donna, I can't remember with your version. I think it has the on instead of the old default way. But what you're going to see is when I turn that on, 3 marks appear on the page. We have a top left square and then 2 L brackets. And this is how the Silhouette machine can read a print and cut. Now, the important things here are, first off, I'm going to left click and drag across the entire design. And then I'm going to right click and choose group. So it will all function as one. I want to move this design down out of the crosshatched area. So I will try to explain this as it is registering as well. But what happens is when you have registration marks activated on a design, that tells the Silhouette machine to turn on an optical eye. It is not a high level of intelligence. It is simply a laser eye that is looking very specifically for these black marks in a very specific location. If those marks are not in that location, it can lead to an inaccurate print and cut. For instance, if your printer misfeeds and doesn't pick up your paper the proper way. Some printers don't like specialty media and things like that, so it can print skewed. If your paper is not securely straight in your printer and it prints off, that can all affect your results in print and cut. That isn't a machine fault. It's not a software fault. It is very, very calibrated to a Silhouette cutting mat and to the location where this is designed and set in the top left corner. So it's first going to read this black registration mark. Then it moves down and it reads the bottom L bracket this direction up and down. Then it reads the bottom L bracket left to right. And then it moves up to the top and it does the same. Now I can't remember if it does the right to left first or the top to bottom. We'll watch the machine. It does it so fast sometimes that I can't remember. But that optical eye is looking for those marks in a very specific location. And this crosshatched area is very important for its success, because if there's any part of the design that's in that crosshatched area, the optical eye can pick that up and it can interfere with an accurate reading. It can still look like it read properly, but it may not have. So those are some things that we see often in reasons that there are offcuts. And I'll share a couple more tips here too. Now, I'm going to show you how to turn this cut file into a print and cut. I'm going to ungroup this so it's easier to work with. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's zoom in here so we can see a little bit easier. I just want to select, left click, drag across my wreath. So it's selecting both the bottom portion of the wreath and the top layers. Hold my shift key down and I'm going to click on the fall blessings. I want to group this all together. Right click and choose group. So now the only object I have selected on my design is the wreath. I'm going to come over here to the send tab. And you want to do this if you're going to make any copies. It's best to do this before you make the copies, because then it'll all be set up and you don't have to do it for every single copy you make. So this gray selection box indicates what I have currently selected on my design. I'm going to choose no cut. It's going to turn those cut lines off, and it's only going to print the wreath. Anything that shows as bold red is what it's going to cut. So now I've taken a cut file and I've turned it into a print and cut file. And then I can come back here to the design tab, and then I can group it all together. If I were to group the whole thing together, when I choose that action of no cut, it's going to turn all the cut lines off. So when you are turning cut lines on and off, you want to make sure first thing that your object is selected. If you do not have an object selected, let's just come back over here so I can demonstrate that. If I click out here, nothing is selected. There's no gray selection boxes anywhere. It will not allow me to change the action because I have nothing selected. If I click back on this wreath again, now I can change those settings because I have an object selected on the screen. I'm going to come back here to the design tab, and then let's fit to window. Left click, drag across everything to select it, and then I'm going to right click and choose group. Now it all works as one object. So I can move it around. It's all going to move together. And then because I don't like to waste space, I have no idea what I'm going to do with these. I end up with a lot of projects when I'm doing blog posts and classes and things, and I have bins of class demos because I have no idea. But I also don't want to waste the space. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to hold my Alt key down, and I'm going to drag a copy away. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to just scale this down and fit this in here. And I'm going to make a copy, and it doesn't quite fit in my registration or in my cut border. So then I'm just going to select both and just scale that down to fit. So then I don't know what I'll do with it. Maybe I'll put them out at Thanksgiving, which means I'll have to make even more of them for my entire family. And then all I'm going to do, because I am me, I am going to just align them centered. Doesn't make any difference. They're still going to cut. Heidi asked, do I ever reduce the print and cut inset? I will touch on this. The one thing I should have mentioned when I turn my registration marks on, and I recommend this to all users, is to click Restore Defaults. So Restore Defaults is where the defaults for the registration marks. It is going to be your most accurate print and cut for all users. Some users can adjust the registration marks, but not all users. And if you adjust the registration marks and you make them smaller, you make it harder for the machine to read accurately because it has to find it in a smaller space, which means that there is a greater chance of a misread, or you increase your chances of an inaccurate cut. So the smaller you make them and the wider you move them, the greater chance that you could have an inaccurate cut. So here is a question for you to think about, for everybody to think about, not just one person. I'm not calling anybody out here, but I've seen users, and I'll just adjust these. I'm going to click Restore Defaults before I print though. If I move these out all the way, first off, if I move that all the way out, I need to go back to my page setup panel, and I need to click Show Print Border. Just to make sure this little gray border is my print border set by my printer. If your marks are outside of that, they're not going to print, which means it's not going to be able to read accurately. So I always turn on Show Print Border and Show Cut Border. So back here on the registration marks under the advanced options. Now that if I've moved those out, and you can even, let's see, inset, you can, let's see, it will actually, inset adjusts in or out. And at this point, that is the maximum for me with the way I have them set out there. So let's take a look at this. You get a little bit more space. So currently here, I would guess that's about 1/4 inch, maybe a little more than 1/4 inch on this left side. So for 1/4 inch around the entire thing, compared to Restore Defaults, if you use the defaults and you print 2 pages of your design. You have to print 2 pages to get all the number of designs that you want. And it prints and cuts perfectly. No issues. Spot on, perfect print and cut around your designs. Versus if you max those registration marks out and you fill the page as full as possible and you print 5 pages because it's not cutting properly, which one is better? And you don't have to answer, but you can if you want in the comments below. So what we find is we see a lot of users who have printed 5 pages, 10 pages, and they are still not getting accurate cuts around their design. They've maxed everything out. And the number one troubleshooting thing that I have found over the years, the best troubleshooting source when you experience a print and cut is to restore the defaults and print a test print and cut. If it cuts perfectly or on point with the defaults, there's nothing wrong with the machine. The machine is working properly, but it has to do with your materials and the settings. So that's just something to think about when you are working with it. You can definitely do it. And there are times that I do move them, very rarely, but I also tell myself, I do talk to myself. I tell myself, if something goes wrong, it's my own fault because I did move those. So it does not work for all users. And that is why I don't teach it. Because I want you to have the best success with your setup, especially if there is someone who is a beginner. Once you get past that beginner stage and you start to experiment, then definitely try it, see what works. Everybody's printer is different. So that plays a factor into it as well. So let's see, we have a couple questions. Okay, April, so let's see, I have restore defaults here. April is asking if it will cut between the 2 registration marks. Technically, yes. However, there are times that I have seen and we have troubleshot and figured out that there are times that if the optical eye, when it's moving from the top right back to the home position over here, if it doesn't shut off fast enough, then it will pick up the color, especially if you have a dark color. So if it's a lighter color, it doesn't usually matter if it's in this area here, this 1/2 inch area here. But if you have a dark color, the number one way to find out if that's what's affecting it is to move those objects out of that. And then typically your print and cut will cut and it'll be perfect, spot on. So dark colors can interfere up there. And we do see that quite often. Crafty says, if you have a 12 by 12 printer, can you do print and cut larger sizes than letter size? Yes, you just have to set that up as a 12 by 12 page and set that up under your printer settings. So I can touch on that after. If you want to hang around, I can show that too, because I do have the 12 by 12 printer. Heidi says she's been lucky so far. Yes, it's great. She doesn't change any of the advanced options. That's perfect. That's better. Only the inset under the position. It changes the cross-hatched area. I've never noticed the advanced options. Great. I didn't mention those advanced options. For your best success, I recommend the restore defaults. If you do move them and you run into issues, then I recommend that you do a test print and cut with the defaults. And that rules out a lot of things. But I have a few more tips to share for you. When you are done, can you show at which point and how you would save this to cut on a Cricut? Yeah, let me see. It gets a little bit more complicated. I can try. The problem, I'll just say it right here. The problem with Cricut, so you would export this as an SVG and you do need to have the business edition. Cricut doesn't play nice with SVGs from other programs. So sometimes I have to go back and forth when I'm creating designs for my classes that I want to be compatible for a Cricut user. And sometimes it doesn't always like the graphics that come in. Currently, I will state I cannot actually export this file as an SVG because I used a Silhouette Design Store design. So if I go to export as an SVG, I can do that real quick. Let's just demonstrate that. File, save selection, save to hard drive. And if I try to export as an SVG, I'm going to get an error. It's thinking again. So I'll get this export restriction error. And that is it's kind of a safeguard. It wants you to purchase the SVG file from the design store and use the SVG file when you're creating the design here. So it's not something that I can explain, but maybe I can make a note to do a video. I don't know when I can get the video recorded, but it's just Cricut Design Space is weird. Some of it's just that they want to have control over you, so they make it harder for people who are creating SVG files, and they change it. So it doesn't always stay the same. Okay, so great. Bev Jean says she likes the way I explain the reasoning behind why I use the default in print and cut. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. Every time, Vanessa says, happy to hear. I hit this every time I try to take an SVG into Cricut. A regular SVG isn't always a problem, but Cricut Design Space can scale that down. It's so weird what it does. If it's just a basic ordinary SVG file, cut lines only, that's not a problem. Because an SVG you can scale back up without losing quality. Now, if it's some design that has to be a very specific shape, usually I have to play with, or a size, I have to play with that to make sure that it's going to open in Cricut Design Space, and you have to combine the compound paths, and you have to, it's just crazy. I'll see about if I can make a simpler video on that one. Let me think about that one. But let's get this to printing. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to just double check, click on send. I want to double check that my cut lines are where I want, because once I print this design, you cannot move anything on your design screen or it's not going to line up. And if you move something, the machine doesn't know that. So it's going to read the data that was sent as the print file. Yeah, Cricut won't let you export. Corey says, that she doesn't like that. It's the whole reason she got Studio. There are ways around it. There are ways to work with it. Graphics throw another loop into that, but let me see how I can work on a video for that to explain it a little bit easier. Believe me, I get frustrated too and say a few words about Cricut Design Space when I'm creating for classes too, because I'm trying to make it universal for all, and testing in Cricut Design Space has me saying a few choice words at times. So I like to print from the file print menu on the design tab. You can print from the send tab, but this is just how I have gotten used to it. I'm going to come into file print. And then it's going to open my printer window. I do have the print preview pop up. I have not turned that off because I like to check that this bottom registration mark is going to print. That's another thing that we see with users, is that bottom registration mark is outside their printer margins. And if it doesn't print, it's not going to read accurately. So currently what you can see here is that my red cut lines are not showing, which is exactly what I want. The only thing that's going to print is the fall wreath. I can go ahead and I can click print. And then here is where Crafty, this is where you would change your page size. So I have a Canon TS9521C printer. It's called a craft printer. I print everything that is not copy paper through my rear tray. And that is because with the printer, so I have this, pretend this is my printer. The rear tray is back here. So when I print through the rear tray, the paper comes in and goes out. If you print through the bottom tray, your paper has to come inside and make a U-turn. So if you don't have a rear tray, you're less likely to be able to use a lot of specialty materials. It just depends on the printer. But with a rear tray feed, you typically get a little bit more leeway with that because it doesn't have to make the U-turn, and the wheels inside the printer don't lose grip on the materials. That's another thing. If you have only the tray and the material you are printing on is delayed going through, or it gets stuck or just slows down even just a little bit, and those marks are not printed in the exact location and the design, then that can lead to what you see as an inaccurate cut, but it's really a misprint from your printer. So here is the my printer window. Everybody's printer window is going to vary just a little bit depending on their model. So this is for my Canon printer, and you can see here I have the Canon printer selected. If you see Windows default or Mac default printer, that means it's not the full printer drivers that are selected. So make sure you have your full printer drivers downloaded from the manufacturer's website. That's another thing I'm seeing a lot of lately with the Windows updates is it's defaulting to the Windows print menu, and you don't want that. So since I'm printing from my rear tray, I'm going to click on preferences, and then you can set up your page. So here is where if I was printing on 12 by 12 crafty, this is where I would change it. And this is all from my printer drivers. All of those options are sizes from my particular printer drivers. So those are going to look different than what you see on your printer. But I do have the option for a square 12 by 12 here. I'm printing on letter size, so I'm going to leave that alone, but I am going to change this to rear tray. And for this demo, I'm just going to print plain paper standard quality, and I'm going to click OK. Now, if you changed your paper size here, once you click OK, you then need to click on Apply and Cancel to go back to the Design tab for it to reset. That's only if you've changed your page size. Since I didn't change the page size, I can simply go to Print, and it's going to print. And while that's printing, I'm going to answer some questions over here. My printer's low, honey. Don't pay any attention. Linda, the free file is a newsletter for newsletter subscribers. The newsletter comes out every Friday, and in the video description below this, there is a link to sign up for that newsletter. So this month is a free file from Lori Whitlock. Angie says, I learned something new with every one of your tutorials. I had no idea cut lines had to be thin in order not to show up when printing. Thanks for such excellent instructions. I'm glad it's helped. I'm going to grab this print. So I have this printout here. You can see, just make sure that your ink is dry before you grab it and put it onto your cutting mat. If you smear those marks, that's going to affect your accuracy as well too. So I'm going to show the next steps in the Silhouette software before I switch cameras. So I'm going to come up here to the Send tab, and then I'm going to select my cut settings. So I'm just using plain Recollections cardstock. I'm going to use a setting for cardstock textured, and I'm going to do a 3 with a force of 30. Test cut, test cut, test cut. There are so many factors that go into the actual cut quality with your machine model, the blade you're using, how old that blade is, what that blade has cut, how sharp the blade is, and how many edit points that we saw, those little gray dots, that can also affect your cut quality. So while there are presets in the Silhouette Studio software, they are just a starting point for you to test cut with, because we have, as we've seen in the chat, we have global members. So global users worldwide. Materials vary worldwide. So our cardstock here in the US is a little bit different than card in the UK and international countries. Okay. Yes, Linda, it is the newsletter subscription. I can post a link in the comments after the video. It's in the video description. I'm afraid if I try to go find it now, it'll take me way too long, but it is in the description below this video if it shows on the live. And then you just have to subscribe to the newsletter. And on Friday, it will come out to once you've confirmed your subscription. So that's how you can get the free file each week. So next, it's telling me I have no media loaded. To save back and forth on the cameras, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what the next steps is. Once I switch over to the camera for the machine, we're going to stay on that camera for a little bit. When I'm ready to send it and it's loaded in the machine, I'm going to come back here and click send, but you may not see that. So I just want to explain that while I do that. So let's go ahead and switch. Let's see if I can switch and see what you see. Oh, that wasn't too hard. Okay, maybe it'll be easier than I thought. So here is my Cameo 5 machine. I am going to be off camera a little bit with this, so just bear with me. So I have my Silhouette cutting mat. It is calibrated specifically for a Silhouette cutting mat. We've already talked about how your print and cut has to be set up exactly the same as your on screen. So a Silhouette cutting mat has a specific margin here and a specific margin here. We're going to take this protective cover off, and I just put that down on my mat, on my table. I'm going to line up my printed page in the top left corner exactly as it shows on the screen. Now I'm a little bit high. I can see this right here. I'm just a little bit high. That could make a difference. We'll see. Anything that is different than what is on screen can make a difference. The reason I mention these page margins is I'm going to pull this over. Now, I do not personally recommend third-party mats, but I see a lot of people do. So here, this is a cutting mat from Hobby Lobby. The page margins are not the same size. So, now it's stuck. So if I line this up edge to edge, the page margins are not the same size. This one is a little bit further in, but what makes the main difference here is this one at the top. If you can see this here, here's the top of my Silhouette cutting mat grid. Here's the top of this cutting mat grid. So when the machine goes to read this one, if I were to use this mat, this registration mark is going to be farther down than what the machine thinks it is. So it's going to work harder to try to find that, and it has a greater chance of an inaccurate cut. So it is calibrated to look for it specifically in the dimensions of a Silhouette cutting mat. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load my cutting mat. I'm going to line it up, and this is really hard to see on a black machine, but there is a little raised edge here. I'm going to line up the left edge along that line, hold my mat up to the rollers, and I'm going to reach over to this side. My camera is just a little bit off. Oh, there we go. And press the load button. Now, if you have any skipping or the mat did not load straight, unload it and reload it. Again, it's very, very specific for your accurate results. The other thing I want to show here is especially on the Cameo 4 and Cameo 5 models. And I've reported extensively for print and cut issues. Let's see if I can get this in a little bit closer so you can see it and if it'll focus. Okay. Whoop. Nope, not that close. Sorry, guys. Let's see if I can get it to focus in here. I'm going to go slow, so hopefully you can see this. So currently my mat is just hanging down and resting on my table. If I lift this up, you're going to see here, the mat moves. So right now, if I'm supporting my cutting mat, this is completely flat. If I let it drop, that mat bows up between my rollers. It's just a little bit, but when it comes over here to read this registration mark on this top right, it's not a flat surface. It's not completely flat if my mat is not supported. And I found this to be a very, very important with the Cameo 5, but still very important on the Cameo 4. It's solved very easily. You can just support your mat. With the Cameo 5, it does have the roll feeder that you can install. It goes on the front, along the front of the machine. I don't have it here just because for video's sake. That helps to support it and it helps it lift up. So I want to show that one more time. So right now I have my mat supported. And if I let it go, you can see how that mat bows up. That has affected my print and cut. So I'm going to bring this back out so we can see it and see if I can move this camera up a little bit so you can see how I do this. So cutting mat is just, there's only an inch and a half drop, but it's bowed. I can push this down. So if I lift this up, I'm just holding it up, supporting it. It is flat. I have 100% success with this because my mat is flat. It's going to read that registration mark completely flat instead of hitting a rounded surface. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does, because it's what I found works the best. I'm going to continue holding this up. Answer a question here. April asked, so it will not cut correctly if you are using a different brand mat. No, and that's what the problem is. Sometimes, yes, it will cut fine. There's a lot of people out there that swear by third-party mats. However, if you run into an issue, that is one of the first things that eliminates the issue is, and it can affect not just, let's see how I can say this. It can affect not only the reading of the registration marks to where you'll get an error, or it will say that registration can't be read, or your cut around the design is off because it wasn't in the correct location that you told it to in the software. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me get this going, and Elizabeth, I will answer that question here in just a second. So I'm going to support my cutting mat, and I'm going to try to catch this machine in action. It's pretty fast. I'm going to exit full screen, come back to my, here we go. Minimize, click send. With the Cameo 5, I have this new pop-up here. I'm going to click send and then open my camera again. So it's reading that mark. So it's reading across the square. The optical eye is directly below this section. Now it reads the bottom of that mark. So it reads left to right and then top to bottom. And then once it's read, now it's going to adjust the blade. And then it's going to cut. Typically, after it's read the registration marks, I can let this go. If it's hanging over the edge, I would not. I would support it. So it's going to complete that cut. We'll be able to see how accurate, and hopefully it doesn't make a fool of me when around the offset of that design once it's done cutting. Elizabeth asks, is there a big difference between the Cameo 4 and the 5? Is it worth upgrading? That would depend completely on you and what you want to do with it. The Cameo 5, I get the new models of machines because I teach. So I feel that in order to troubleshoot and teach, it's very important for me to have those and to have experience with those because there can be differences. So that's why I do it. The other option is that the Cameo 5 does have some upgrades to it. I think they're very good upgrades. For instance, the rollers. You can adjust these rollers in more locations. It just depends on what exactly you are looking for. I love the Silhouette electrostatic mat. I will put links in the description below this video after it's all done. And when I go back and edit the description, love the electrostatic mat. If you cut paper a lot, it is great. It does take time to learn it and time to test cut for your materials, but it is a really, no more sticky mats when you're cutting with paper. And maybe I'll do a demonstration next month on that. We'll see how popular that is. If you would like me to do next month's with the electrostatic mat, let me know. Sometimes I don't do certain things like the Curio 2. Not everybody has a Curio 2, so I'm probably not going to do a live on that. I do have a lot of recorded videos on that, but it just depends on what the popularity is. I want you to get the most out of it. And that's why I really try to focus the lives on software, because that's what everybody has. So, Bev Jean says, this explains why when I use the third-party mats, I have to use the manual match and manually move the line up to the mat. Yes. So we see it not just with print and cut with third-party mats. So there's a lot of reasons I don't recommend them. One, it voids the machine warranty. Any videos that you would submit to support with showing a third-party mat, your warranty is voided. Two, it has been shown to decrease the lifespan on some machine models. With the Cameo 3 especially, Cricut mats are thicker than a Silhouette cutting mat, and it decreased the lifespan on those rollers. It also, Cameo Pro is very, very specific, and it affects the rollers on the Cameo Pro as well when thicker mats are used. Once you've stretched out those rollers, it's going to lose grip. It's just not going to hold as well. And then the cut area, the margins are different. That means it's not going to match exactly on the screen where you have your material placed. So that can affect where it cuts. We see a lot of cuts, just regular cuts that are too high on the cutting mat, and people ask why it's cutting my cutting mat. Well, the margin isn't the same on a third-party mat. Okay. Yes, April, the mats for the Cameo 4 and the 5, the 12x12 cutting mat for the Silhouette is universal for all the machines, Cameo machines that take it. So let's go ahead and take this off. I'm going to go ahead and unload this. And then when I'm working with cardstock, I'm going to flip this over. I have my protective sheet down, or my mat cover down. I'm going to peel my mat away from my cardstock carefully so I don't tear my cut. And I'm just going to help that. So the sharper angle that I can peel my cutting mat back, it's going to help release that. It also saves the adhesive on my cutting mat because it's helping to release that versus pulling the adhesive up. So I'm just going to roll this off. And be careful around that cutout. You do, in my experience, want a very sticky cutting mat when cutting cardstock, because if any part of your cardstock moves, then you could come out with cuts that are not complete, or the corners don't meet, or things like that. So a good sticky mat is always great. The Cameo 5 with the electrostatic mat. Here's one. Here's another. And here's our third. So now here comes the test. Let me throw this away. We'll get this zoomed in here a little bit. I'm going to carefully bend along my score lines. And here is the large one. So looking at it, I held my mat completely level so it did not bounce at an angle on that registration mark. And you tell me what you think. You tell me if that is accurate around the offset. And then let's do the little ones. So here's a little one, if it'll focus in on this. So I know my opinion on this. Now, sometimes things just happen, but if you're getting inconsistent cuts or off cuts on everything and you're frustrated, go back to the defaults. Go back to the defaults, hold your Silhouette cutting mat level, and do a test. That is the fastest way to identify issues. Now, let's come back here. I'm going to come back to stop share. So I'm full screen again. Oops. make sure I hit the right button. Okay, I'm full screen again. So it's not just about you're doing something wrong. When you run into an issue, especially when we troubleshoot, that is not what we're looking for. We have found through years of troubleshooting with hundreds and thousands of users worldwide, the fastest way to identify the issue is to eliminate as many things that could be wrong or could be causing the problem as possible, which is why we ask for very specific photos, and we suggest starting, if we can't identify the issue with the specific photos that we ask for, if we can't identify it from those photos, then we say, then going back to the basics is the number one fastest way to find out what the issue is. Because when you go back to the basics and you use those defaults for the registration marks and you start from ground zero, you have eliminated a lot of the things along the way that could have affected your outcome. So Crafty says, yes, please, on the electric mat. So November's pretty busy, but I'll try to work something in. Even a short live. I have some family coming into town. So of the foam knee pads used for gardening. You can add things in if your mat's hanging down. The only thing I caution there is, Jean, make sure it's nothing that's going to catch, because if that mat something, that will affect your print definitely. So I'm going to grab these designs from back here, so share, and then we'll answer the remaining questions. So here is things. Whoop, camera. This is I did scale this down just a little bit to fit on this plaque. It's just going to be crooked. And some of these pieces were a little bit, hold on. Some of these pieces got a little bit tricky. They were pretty thin. So I would suggest, like, look at some of those leaves. The inside, you can see the detail there on those leaves. So any smaller than that, you might have a difficult time. I did cut all of this using the electrostatic mat, all the pieces here. And so I wouldn't scale this down necessarily if you're going to be cutting it piece by piece. So, and then here is, I just took extra, I had cut extra flowers and I added it, glued them onto a wood block. I did use some I'm just backwards. I inked up those flowers to give it a little bit of dimension, glued those on, and I put on the vinyl. So it's gold vinyl with brown. It's hard to see in the light, but brown. So those are the two designs so far this month that I've created with it, in addition to these pop out top cards. So let's see what else we have here. Yes, so usually ask questions going on since May. And if you're having issues on your current software, then sometimes it's necessary to upgrade. The other thing we ask for is if it's Windows or Mac. So all of those things kind of play into it. And then we try to advise on the best version for the user. So I wish I could say blanket across that everybody be on this specific version, but that doesn't always work well. Okay, so Bavine says, I like that you show how to use the machines because I'm thinking I really want to upgrade to the Cameo 5. I do like the Cameo 5. I mean, I have all the models. I have way too many cutting machines, and I can't get rid of them. Even though I get new ones. Someday I might need to go. I still have my original Cameo 1. Now, what I will say is the Cameo 5 is quieter than the Cameo 4. However, the Cameo 1 is loud. And I think it's just that over the years, we kind of two things being a little bit quieter. My Cameo, it looks the cutting strip is eaten somehow, so I don't change it. I'm like, if it's not, I'm not going to mess it. But when I pull that thing out, cut with, Bev James, it looks right, right on. Let's see, they look great to me. Thank you, Kathy. Kathy says your attention to detail is admired. This is a cute card. Cannot wait to make one. I will post the link here before I get off the live. It does take a little bit of time for YouTube to populate all the comments. And then I really like that name, placement tags for dinner. I think they would be really good. They're cute. They're tiny. They're cute. And once you have it doesn't, if you watch the video and follow along with what I did, I don't think it would take anyone time at all. My goal in my classes is to teach how you can teach you so you don't have to rely on someone else for someone, and you want to continue to take classes, and it's always a new learning experience. I still learn things all the time, but my goal in my classes and in my videos is to teach it so that anyone can follow it. Anyone can do it if they take the time to do it. So many thanks. Also debating on the Cameo 5. I will put up links down below just in case you decide to do that. You'll be able to, Made by Me, you will be able to find this as soon as YouTube just processes it. Usually it's pretty quick. Just the comments take like 24 hours to populate. The live comments do, but it'll be on my Silhouette Secrets YouTube channel under the live tab. So it'll be there forever until the information. And I guess I should say that till the information is. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to manage what 2025 is lives on version 5. Although I hesitate to do that because I know he will be waiting at the beginning, and I don't absolutely have to. Sometimes it's good to wait a little, but whether it's in recorded video or so, we'll see how that goes. But I do want to say thank you, everyone who joined. Crafty, I hope I did answer the question on how to change it to the 12 by 12. If you do have additional questions on that, just pop them in the comments below. But I would recommend just getting into your printer settings and change that and see if it works for you. Just make sure to click apply and then cancel to go back out to the design tab so that it resets for the 12 by 12 page. The easiest way to know is to check that little show printer border, and that's how you're going to be able to know easily if it reset for your page size. So, okay, guys, I think I got everything. If I didn't, please make another comment when this video ends. Pop in a comment down there. I will put additional information in the video description as well, but feel free to leave the comments and I will also link information there too. So thanks for joining me. Stay tuned next month for the third Monday of the month.